بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد فقد قال جل وعلا في كتاب المبين شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان فمن شهد منكم الشهر فليصم إلى آخر الآية. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're all well. We had a slightly delayed time today because of Maghrib prayer. And today is the second part in our two-part series on the Prophet's Ramadan. And there are some kind of very specific points that I want to discuss today. However, with that in mind, I want to start with an overview of a few important things. Excellent. So today I want to talk about some inner dimensions of fasting, as well as some of the habits of the Prophet ﷺ, in the month of Ramadan, as well, general habits, and also just a few other points, inshallah. Maybe touch on a few controversies like moon sighting and stuff like that as well. Why not? So there are quite a few, many hadith, I would say, on the merits of fasting, generally speaking. But for the month of Ramadan, there are quite a few hadith as well. And some of them are weak, quite many of them are strong hadith. But when it comes to hadith related to fasting, even those that are weak, really, in terms of the merits of fasting, they're all fine to use. For instance, you have the narration that Imam Ahmad narrates in his Musnad that للمؤمن فرحتان عند الإفطار وعند لقاء الرحمن, that the believer has two states of ecstasy or joy. One moment is when iftar time, and the other is when he meets his Lord. Now, what I want to look at is during the day. Now, during the day, what did the Prophet ﷺ, what did he alayhi salatu wasalam do during the day? Now, of course, the day of a prophet is unlike the day of any other person. You know, prophets receive revelation, and not only that, their attention is, or their time is often taken up by people's needs. So people come to them, they need, whatever they may need, from, food to dua to, every walk of life. People come from every walk of life to the Messenger of God, alayhi salatu, asking him for things and to fulfill their needs. So the Messenger of God's day is also, aside from that, full of remembrance of God as well. So the Prophet ﷺ would increase his recitation of Quran during Ramadan outside and inside prayer. Now I want to mention the first point about Quran. What should we do about reading Quran? How much Quran should we read? What's a recommended amount? So I heard once somebody say that the right of the Book of Allah, is that one completes the Book of Allah, in the month of Ramadan. Now I know that many scholars like Sheikh Imam Ghazali mentions it as well in his Ihya, Sheikh Abdullah bin Alawi as well, and other people, this idea that from Ramadan the practice should be that one recites at least one juz', one section of the Quran a day, and then finishes it in the month. However, I don't believe we kind of live in those times anymore where, we live in a time where worship is on the decline. Piety is definitely on the decline. Remembrance of God is on the decline. People setting the akhirah or their final moments in the world as a goal or as a kind of something in their sights, those types of people have declined. So when it comes to reading of Quran, of course, that's going to decline as well. So if most people, taking that into consideration, do not generally read Quran anyway, then to almost not impose, but you know, um, make them feel that they have to read the whole Quran, and the Quran has that right over people in the month of Ramadan. It's very sustainable. Furthermore, would it not be better that they start a habit that they continue with after Ramadan? And this is the most important point. One should read Quran in such a way that if you didn't read it before, recite it before, that it stays as a habit in your daily life after the month of Ramadan. That's very, very important. So that would mean, a little bit of Quran is a lot of Quran. If that meant that they would read half a page, um, so whatever you think you can sustain, that's how much Quran you should try to read. Number one, because you don't want to read it for 2-3 days and give up. That's number one. Number two, try your utmost best to read the Quran with some form of understanding as well, if that be with the translation. So you learn something as well from the Book of Allah and God's Word, rather than just reciting, although that's incredibly beneficial. But the Quran is revealed to understand, not only to recite. So those two things are very, very important. Of course, with the Prophet ﷺ, the archangel would come and the Prophet ﷺ would recite the Quran in Ramadan once with the Archangel Gabriel alayhi salam. There's a riwayah of Abdullah bin Mas'ud, the companion, that the Prophet ﷺ would tell him to read the Quran to the Messenger of God, and he would say, "O Messenger of God, you want me to read the Quran? Yet it was revealed upon you," meaning, isn't it? I don't feel comfortable doing that. Because you're the messenger of God, it was revealed to you. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, "I love to listen to the Quran." So those narrations are Abdullah bin Mas'ud. So the Prophet ﷺ's point is that it was the month of Quran. It was a month that was full of reciting of the Quran. So if you don't generally read the Book of Allah, you don't access it, then this is an opportunity, this blessed month, which will arrive in a week or so, to kind of renew that intent and start reading a little bit before, and then in Ramadan to keep it up as a habit, so that after Ramadan we can all continue reading it. Number two, next, moving on from the recitation of Quran, generosity. That the Prophet ﷺ was incredibly generous in this month, and this is generally Shahrul Zakat as well, the month of Zakat, where people pay the Zakat. And you have all these charities. They do all their collecting in Ramadan, and of course, because people are more willing to give. But they say, we did not see the Messenger of God in any month. We did not see him more generous in any month than the month of Ramadan. Meaning, we did not see him. We saw him the most generous, rather, put it that way, in the month of Ramadan. So after Sayyidina Jibril came to him, his generosity would be faster than the sweeping wind, it said. And Nawawi comments that this hadith is an indication that one should be particularly generous after meeting a holy person. And the idea is that when the Prophet ﷺ, they say that when somebody would come to him, he would never say no. He would never say no. The hadith that the most virtuous charity is that given in Ramadan. This is a month of empathy, one in which the sustenance of the believer is increased. Whoever opens the fast of another will receive reward equal to his, with no reduction in the reward of either. So now that brings us to the iftar. How did the Prophet ﷺ, how was his iftar? How did he break his fast? Now, we know that the Prophet ﷺ's diet, I did touch on this last week. It's a bit of a joke, actually, about what the Sunnah states about eating habits and um, how one should be physically and how they should maintain their health, etc. The Prophet ﷺ rarely would eat anyway. I mean, he wouldn't eat very much at all. Very rarely would eat, and when he ate, he would eat a few morsels and that's it. You would never think that the Messenger of God would ever eat to his fill. Alayhi salatu wasalam. The Prophet ﷺ said, "My community will remain on goodness as long as they are swift with iftar." Meaning that as soon as the fast is open, get to the iftar, don't delay. Um, yeah. So now with invitations and some advice, obviously, I think I don't know what the current advice is. Hamza, you can update me. The government advice on mixing here in the UK. Um, but I think it's two households. So I don't think there'll be many iftar parties anyway. My wife did tell me that apparently they're opening restaurants, so I assume everybody's going to rush to restaurants. Yeah, with restaurants, if it's a very just like a one-off, if it's a one-off, that's fine. But this culture where people are rushing to restaurants in Ramadan, it takes away the spirit of Ramadan. Ramadan is a month of spirituality. It's not a month of entertainment in that sense. It's a month of spirituality, and it's a month of. It's not about the eating. That's the point. If somebody's invited one off, it's fine. It's not a problem. But people are going to restaurant constantly to restaurants during Ramadan. You can do that outside of Ramadan. So the Messenger of God ﷺ would accept the invitation of anyone who invited him for iftar. So, and many would invite him, of course. He would say, "The fasting has broken fast with you. The righteous have eaten your food, and the angels have supplicated for you." So, but we won't be able to really do that at the moment, considering the situation. But it is, however, that doesn't mean that some people. That doesn't mean anybody. Every iftar you burden your family by inviting somebody new to your house, and then your poor wife's in the kitchen cooking all that food every day, extra food, more extra food. So have a balance with that as well. Abdullah bin Umar would never perform iftar without the poor. If a poor person came to him, he would immediately give his own portion of food to that poor person. Okay, what did he eat, alayhi salatu wasalam? What were the items of food during his that he would have for iftar? He would, number one, have fresh dates, and dates are very good for you anyway. Of course, they have a excellent nutritional value. Or even dried dates, or even with sips of water. Now, there is a hadith that one shouldn't perform. There's a narration about breaking the fast with something that's been cooked. That rather you should break your fast with something more natural, like a date or some water, or even some milk. The Messenger of God had performed with all of these things, the opening of his fast. And then he would make dua after the iftar. And normally our du'as are after the iftar. In terms of the sunnah for dua, as far as I'm aware, that when you read the famous dua, Allahumma inni laka sumtu wa bika amantu, that dua, you should first break your fast and then you should read the dua. Why? Because the dua comes after the fast generally. Even if you look at the wording of the hadith, the dua, it's, "Oh God, I fasted. Allahumma inni laka sumtu," for you. I fasted for you. So you should break your fast and then read the dua after. Often people read it the other way around. I mean, there's no harm in it, reading the other way around. But as far as I'm aware, the correct way to do it is to break the fast and then read the dua. But of course, break the fast at the right time. Don't break it at the wrong time. He would make, yeah. So now I want to move on before we get to other parts of Ramadan. Some of what Imam al-Ghazali states about the fast. So the fast itself, Imam al-Ghazali's Ihya talks about different levels of fasting, or the different grades of fasting. He begins then with the first type of fast, which he calls the ordinary fast. And that's a fast for everybody. That, it's not anything special in the sense that, it's obligated upon everybody. And that fast is uh, fasting from or abstaining from food, drink, and marital relations. That's an easy one. So that's the fast of the general person. What's obligatory? Then he talks about the idea of the fast that is special, and he writes, fasting means keeping one's ears, eyes, tongue, hands, and feet, and all other organs free from sin. So the avoidance of sin, because in the famous hadith, God is not in need of your hunger. The idea is that the fast is for us, that it spiritually reforms us as people, and it's for our benefit and our advantage. So therefore, what's hunger if one's behavior doesn't change? So ears, eyes, tongue, hands, and feet, and all of the organs free from sin. That's the fast of the special people, or the special type of fast. Now then there is the fast of you could call the elect or the elite. And here fasting means fasting of the heart from unworthy concerns and worldly thoughts. I remember an interesting video. I don't know his name, or maybe somebody knows his name. He is mixed race, and he has like light eyes, maybe green eyes. He is American. He's an American weightlifter, and I don't know his name though. And somebody asked him a question about Ramadan, and he's not a Muslim. That in Ramadan, what should I do? I may lose my gains. So whoever this person was, a gym goer, was scared that they'll lose muscle mass in Ramadan. So they're asking him what they should do. And you would normally think that he's going to say, okay, what you should do is, um, increase your reps, cut your reps, whatever it may be. And he just had a rant. He said, like, why do you even care about that? The month of Ramadan is a month of spirituality. You should be worried about your spiritual state. And, and you're worried about your muscles. And this guy's a weightlifter. And his point was very, very, it was unbelievable, because that's the core of the matter, you see. That Ramadan is a spiritual month. The whole idea of the month is that we stop doing certain things that have been weighing us down. We have to stop doing them. I heard something yesterday. I was listening to it about money. That think about money, for instance. Being rich or having money or being wealthy is a state of mind, you see. So you may have a little bit, but you may make a lot of it, in the sense that you may think, look, I've got that. That's a lot of money, you see. And it will always be a lot of money for you. However, if you may have lots and lots of money, but may think it's not enough, it's a state of mind, you see. And you may get double that, triple that, quadruple that, but it will never be enough until you change your state of mind, you see. So people that live on little, or live on much less than a rich person, may think to themselves that they're very wealthy, and they think that I've got a lot of wealth, alhamdulillah, that I have so much. So they will always have abundance, you see. Whereas a person who may have lots of money, but his state of mind is that I don't have enough, will always be poor. And that's very, very important, because it's what our mindset is in relation to different things. So Ramadan is, in that sense, therefore, things that have been weighing us down, that we know we can probably lessen, we can probably relax and fill that time with more spirituality. We should definitely do that in Ramadan, because we're not going to we don't have the energy and the spiritual energy and the physical energy like we do in Ramadan. So that's important. So that's what he means by fast of the elites, means a fasting of the heart from unworthy concerns and worldly thoughts, in total disregard of everything but God. Great and glorious is He. Of course, this is the fast of the elite. This is not something that everybody can do. But the middle one, definitely one we should aim at, which is the idea of one's ears, eyes, tongue, hands, and feet, and all other organs from sin. But if we can get some of this, he says, this kind of fast is broken by thinking of anything other than God. Now, this, of course, is really the fast of the elite now. That they were very concerned about their thoughts. They broken, but in the sense that they feel that they've lost the barakah of the fast when they change, when they begin to think about other than God. Of course, that's a fast of the elite and even the prophets. This is the type of fast that the prophets have. Now, he talks about Al-Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala inward requirements of fasting. So I want to go through some of them as well. So, number one, see not what displeases God. A chaste regard, restrained from viewing anything that is blameworthy or reprehensible, or that distracts the heart and diverts it from the remembrance of God. The Prophet ﷺ said, the furtive glance is one of the poisoned arrows of the devil. On him be God's curse. Whoever forsakes it for the fear of God will receive from him, great and glorious is he, a faith, the sweetness of which he will find within his heart. Jabir narrated from Anas ibn Malik that the Prophet ﷺ said 5 things break a man's fast: lying, backbiting, scandal mongering, perjury, and a lustful gaze. And this is not literal, of course. One should understand that these hadith don't talk about breaking the fast legally. You're still fasting. It's in relation to the reward of that fast. The additional reward of that fast is one does not receive it anymore. Now, it's quite important, therefore, that if we're people who, if everybody watches telly, just give it up in Ramadan. In that sense, like it's a month where we can just give up watching programs and stuff like that, and spend that time doing something else. It's only 30 days or 29 days. So that's quite important as well. And the reason that's important, and I would say, it's because we need a detox anyway. Ramadan gives us the opportunity to also mentally detox. And if we need anything in the current life, with the current lifestyle we have, we do need to detox from kind of media and watching stuff and constantly on the internet, etc. We need a detox from that, and Ramadan gives us the opportunity. He, of course, is talking about lustful gazing. That's a given, of course. Number 2, speak not. Guarding one's tongue from twaddle, lying, backbiting, scandal mongering, obscenity, rudeness, wrangling, controversy, making it observe, silence, and occupying it with the remembrance of God. Argumentation would probably be the greatest one, because when people are hungry, they tend to explode on. They tend to. They have a short fuse in Ramadan, when it should be the opposite, of course. Ramadan would cause us to be more observant of what we say to other people. Remember, what we say to other people can be the difference between can be the difference between God accepting our du'as or not, how we make other people feel, etc. Especially in the home, husband and wife, etc. That they should make if they have problems anyway, or they fear that they're going to problem in Ramadan. Say to each other, look, we're not going to argue in Ramadan. This is not, well, you shouldn't argue outside Ramadan as well, but at least do it for Ramadan. But or if somebody wants to argue with you, say, look, I'm fasting, I'm not getting involved in this. This is not something that I want to do. He writes that this is the fasting of the tongue. Sufyan al-Thawri said, backbiting vitiates the fast. Layth quotes Mujahid as saying 2 habits vitiate fasting: backbiting and telling lies, meaning they take the barakah away from the fast. That's what the meaning is here. The Prophet ﷺ said fasting is a shield. So when one of you is fasting, he should not use foul or foolish talk. If somebody attacks him or insults him, let him say, I am fasting, I am fasting. Yeah. Now, number 3, hear not. What we do with our ears. Closing one's ears to everything reprehensible, for everything unlawful to utter is likewise unlawful to listen to. And just a point of this, because how do we apply that now? I would say that previously people would hear gossip and things like that. Now we read it more often than we hear it, although we do hear it as well. So if you're on social media, why not deactivate for a month? Why not have a social media detox, so you don't have to hear and listen to or see or read, sorry, all the rubbish that you normally is in your feed, that you just get rid of it for that month and say, this month I don't want it to affect me. I was listening earlier about some person was saying she's like a celebrity, and they were asking her if comments on social media affect her, and she said they did a lot before, and now I just don't read them, and even sometimes when I do read them, I it does spoil my day. So if that's the case, that's how quickly somebody it can affect somebody. Then why would you do that in Ramadan? Just give it up, deactivate in Ramadan, especially if it's for personal use. If it's for business, it's different. Um, and have a peaceful month where people are not invading your uh, kind of your private space, your spiritual area or zone. He writes, closing one's ears to everything reprehensible, for everything unlawful to utter is likewise unlawful to listen to. That is why God, great and glorious is He, equated the eavesdropper with the profiteer in his words, listeners of falsehood, consumers of illicit gain. God, great and glorious is He, also said, why do their rabbis and priests not forbid them to utter sin and consume unlawful profit? He then says, silence in the face of backbiting is therefore unlawful. God exalted said, you are then just like them. That is why the Prophet ﷺ said, the backbiter and his listener are co-partners in sin. But don't one should not only give it up, but try not to put yourself into situations where there's a lot of gossip. Sometimes, of course, it's unavoidable. You're there, people are talking. Sometimes it's more harmful to speak. Many of the ulama mentioned if it's more harmful to speak, so just stay quiet and just try to ignore it. Number 4, do not dot dot dot. Keep all other limbs and organs away from sin, the hands and feet from reprehensible deeds, and the stomach from questionable food at the time of breaking fast. It is meaningless to fast, to abstain from lawful food, only to break one's fast on what is unlawful. And this is a clear one. One should never have haram to break their fast on, or haram for anything to consume. Number 5, overeating. So, he writes, not to overindulge in lawful food at the time of breaking fast, to the point of stuffing one's belly. There is no receptacle more odious to God than a belly stuffed full of lawful food. Of what use is the fast as a means of conquering God's enemy and abating appetite, if at the time of breaking it, one not only makes up for all one has missed during the day, but perhaps also indulges in a variety of extra foods? It has even become a custom to stock up for Ramadan. This is Ghazali talking in the 6th century by the Hijri. This is like 1,000 years of Ghazali saying this. He must have, been looking at what the people are doing the day before Ramadan in a Zad supermarket. But anyway, he writes, I'll repeat that part. It has even become the custom to stock up for Ramadan with all kinds of foodstuffs, so that more is consumed during that time than in the course of several other months put together. It is well known that the object of fasting is to experience hunger and to check desire, in order to reinforce the soul in piety. If the stomach is starved from early morning till evening, so that its appetite is aroused and its cravings intensified, and it is then sorry. If the stomach is starved from early morning till evening, so that its appetite is aroused and its craving intensified, and it is then offered delicacies and allowed to eat its fill, its taste for pleasure is increased and its force exaggerated, passions are activated, which would have lain dormant under normal conditions. His point is very, very important here. The purpose of the iftar is just to give you enough food to get you to the next fast, really, to energize you. If we're stuffing our faces, then how are we abating the nafs within? the ego? How are we controlling, or how are we spiritually evolving, you could say? We're not. So what's the point of the fast? You'll just be hungrier the next day. And we can all bear witness to that in Tarawih Salah. When you go there and you can smell everybody's food, not because subcontinent cooking is quite strong and it doesn't leave your clothing. It's because of all the gastric problems that the people have, because they've probably consumed about 3,000 calories just before they came in, which they managed to fill. They probably took a course of about 45 to 50 minutes to do that. And then they get back and they probably look scrummage around for like a wombler. There was a program on TV, the Wombles, for any excess remaining pakore left that may have fallen behind the cooker or something. So and then they repeat that at sahar time, where they stuff their faces again. And if they calculated their calories within a short period of time, they probably consume double what they do outside of Ramadan. It's completely pointless, let's put it that way. You've just almost nullified the intent, the kind of the meaning of the fast. So Ghazali was very big on that. Of course, he has an entire book here about breaking the two desires, and one of them is appetite, eating. The sixth point he mentions, then he writes at the end, he writes, anyone who puts a bag of food between his heart and his breast becomes blind to this revelation. That revelation is which? We surely revealed it on the night of power. Nor is keeping the stomach empty sufficient to remove the veil, unless one also empties the mind of everything but God. Great and glorious is He. That is the entire matter, and the starting point of it all is cutting down on food. That Ghazali believed that the starting point to all spirituality is controlling the appetite. He believed that's what it was. Number 6, looking to God with fear and hope. After the fast has been broken, the heart should swing like a pendulum between fear and hope, for one does not know if one's fast will be accepted, so that one will find favor with God, or whether it will be rejected, leaving one among those he abhors. This is how one should be at the end of any act of worship. It is related of Al-Hasan ibn Abil Hasan al-Basri, that he once passed by a group of people who were laughing merrily. He said, God, great and glorious be He, has made the month of Ramadan a racecourse on which His creatures compete in His worship. Some have come in first and won, while others have lagged behind and lost. It is absolutely amazing to find anybody laughing and playing about on the day when success attends the victors and failure the wastrels. By God, if the veil were lifted off, the doer of good would surely be preoccupied, the veil between one and God, the reality. One would be preoccupied with his good works and the evildoer with his evil deeds. In other words, the man whose fast has been accepted will be too full of joy to indulge in idle sport, while the one who has suffered rejection, laughter will be precluded by remorse. So these are some of the important kind of inner dimensions I wanted to mention today that Ghazali talks about in fasting, and they of course taken all from the Sunnah, the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Talk about a few things now. I won't talk about the i'tikaf because there won't be any i'tikaf this year, of course. So we'll leave that to another period. Now for maybe next year. The night of power I want to talk about. Now the night of power is not known to be on the 27th of Ramadan. The Prophet ﷺ in the famous hadith said, look for it in the odd nights. This is a command of the Messenger of God, the best of all creation. As-Sadiq al-Musduq. So we take the word of the Prophet ﷺ. He said, look for it in the odd nights. Abdullah ibn Abbas, of course, speculated that it was on the 27th, and others did as well. But yet we do not know for sure, and we follow the command of the Messenger of God, and we are very negligent of this sunnah, to look for Laylatul Qadr in the odd nights. We're very negligent of this sunnah when it's a direct command of the best of creation. In fact, Imam Alusi says that the hikmah he believed regarding why Laylatul Qadr is unknown, because he writes that if people knew about it, they would be lazy and they would just wait for it to come. But when it's unknown, people would worship more, looking for it. Is it this night? Is it the next night? And that lack of knowledge, it would drive one to worship more. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Whoever is deprived of it is deprived of all good." On this night, Allah looks towards His ummah, the ummah of Muhammad, with mercy and forgives. Whoever stood during the night of power in faith and hopes for reward will have all their previous sins forgiven. He would describe it by signs. He said, alayhi salatu wasalam, the moon of that night rises like a plate. It is very clear night, neither warm nor cold, and its stars are very clear despite the presence of the moon. Of course, with all the light pollution here, we don't have that advantage. He's practiced during the night. He would stand all through the night in worship. Of course, we should be measured because we're not people that most people don't pray tahajjud and stay up all night. And if you don't do that, you don't want to miss your fajr, salah, or your sahar. So do that in moderation, depending on your habits. He would make dua for forgiveness, especially Allahumma innaka afuun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anna. He would combine reflection, dua, prayer, and recitation during the night. He would involve his whole family in worship. Alayhi salatu wasalam. He would stay, now that's the Laylatul Qadr, the end of Ramadan, and maybe mention on Eid. He would stay awake on the last night of Ramadan. He said, paradise is compulsory for one who keeps 5 nights alive. Yeah, and one of them were the 2 nights of the Eid night. He would leave for Eid prayers from the place of i'tikaf. Alayhi salatu wasalam. So, that's kind of the Prophet's fast in you could say in a nutshell, in a sense, because obviously we don't have the time to go into each point in detail. So what I'll do now is, inshallah, I'll take questions. We'll keep the last 10 minutes for questions, and yeah. Yeah. Hamza just fired them at me from, if we had any from last week as well. In terms of discourses during Ramadan, can we hold a Mus'haf or the Quran app on the phone when reading Taraweeh? Not in the Hanafi school. In the Hanafi school, no. So, Zafar, I assume, if it's a Zafar, I think it is. If you follow the Hanafi school, no, the Hanafis would consider that, as far as I'm aware, to be excess movement. So, the Shafi'is do have some opinions that allow it. So, yeah. That's why it's important, I believe, that, everybody should try to the utmost best, make it a life goal to try to memorize the last juz of the Quran, at least. Even if it takes you years, it doesn't matter. It's not a race. That and then you'll have more to read, because you find that in because a lot of people can be reading Taraweeh at home, you see. So, there's more to read than Juz Amma. Is more than enough to read in. So that's what my recommendation will be. As long as put a plan together, say to yourself, I'll memorize, even if it's 3 years, make a plan and try to memorize Juz Amma. If we are Taraweeh, can we hold a child while doing it? Taraweeh. I don't know why you would need to hold a child whilst reading in Taraweeh. So, do you mean like with one of those harnesses? Yeah. Okay. So, Recommendations for increasing ibadah slowly and incrementally that is manageable in the month, that isn't burdening. For Quran, definitely one. Um, I would recommend that, you know, if you're somebody who struggles to read a lot of Quran, say to yourself, you'll read half a page a day. And if half a page is too little, then read one page a day. If half a page is too much for you, which half a page is normally okay, um, even, if, why not read your favorite surahs, maybe do the Yasin, Surat al-Mulk, off recited surahs, if that will make you read more Quran in the month of Ramadan. So that for Quran, that's definitely important. Um, yeah, so half a page or a page. And if you can't do it every day, then do it every other day. But try to keep it up and try to position it at a time where you know you will read it. You know, definitely I'll read it. For instance, one of the big problems in households that I find is the following, that because there's so much emphasis on prepping food in the family, husband, wife, whatever it is, that a lot of time is lost, you see. Why not just have very simple food that doesn't take long to make? Have that ready and set, and then have some time before the fast opens and sit there before the fast opens for 15, 20 minutes and read your Quran then, because unless you're, everybody's working from home pretty much, you see. Um, yeah, so yeah, so that those moments before the fast open are very important. We don't want to be running around and stuff like that. Maybe we should cut our eating habits down and type of cooked food. And if you have to eat hummus and crackers, you eat hummus and crackers. It's Ramadan. Why do people complain about food anyway? I mean, ugh. But and yeah. So can Laylatul Qadr be any of the odd nights during Ramadan, or more specifically the last 10? No, the last 10. So the hadith is about the Prophet ﷺ being in i'tikaf, you see. And he said, look for it in the last 10, in the odd nights. Yeah. Yeah, also please stay updated at sacredtext.co.uk. My organization, my name is Shamasis. We have a Ramadan program coming up, inshallah. Go on our Facebook and Instagram, you'll find all the details there. We have a Ramadan program with classes on. I'm reading from there because I can't remember the timetable. Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Um, every week, inshallah. So I will be on every week. I am on. Not that you'd want to listen to me, but I mean, Hamza, when am I on? I'll tell you anyway. Uh, let me check. I think I'm on Sundays. Pretty sure it's Sunday. Yeah. So, yeah. Are there any other questions before we break? Sunday, I'm on Sunday. Yeah. But check that out. It's on our Sacred Text syllabus. Check it out on the Instagram and on Facebook. 4 days a week, we're doing a Ramadan program. We do one every year, actually, pretty much. But this one we've done is a lockdown special, you could call it. Yeah. And of course, Radiant Hearts as well. So please, everybody, check out a new project that we've launched. It's at radianthearts.org. It's the Ghazali program for children, spirituality for children aged 5 to 16. It's an online program, pre-recorded. All the details are on the website. We spent a good part of half a year preparing it and getting it ready and creating the project. Check it out at radianthearts.org. What is the purpose of learning about Islam? Is it to prove our practice? Would knowledge that doesn't improve practice be deemed useless? Very good, excellent question. I don't know if I have time for that. That's a long question, but what a question. Zafar, when working at zakat, do you consider the mortgage? There's khilaf on this. That do you take the yearly payment out, or do you take just that month's payment out? I would say just take that month's payment out and don't take the whole sum out of it. Don't subtract the whole sum, just the month, and then whatever you have left over when you need to pay zakat, pay. What is the purpose? Yeah, so what is the purpose of learning about Islam? It's not about learning about Islam. You're completely right. We need ilmul hal, knowledge that will reform us spiritually, that bring us closer to God. See, scholars have to be trained in many different disciplines. Why? Because they have to deal with the problems they deal with are multifaceted. So scholars need to be trained in multiple disciplines, subjects to deal with different problems. But the public, the majority of people, should only really learn that which benefits them directly and pretty much stay away from everything else. Nowadays people are obsessed with controversy. You see, something that I really despise. Now, that if it's hot off the press, if it's controversial, if everybody's talking about it, this is not Islam. This is just firqa and this is just argumentation. And you'll see if you go on YouTube, all the videos about debates and arguments and somebody winning over another person winning over another. They have the most hits because that's enough. You see, so ego loves that type of stuff. The purpose of learning about Allah and His Messenger is to reform us spiritually. And if it's not doing that, then we're either learning it incorrectly or from the wrong people. It's one of the two. Or there's something about us that we need to fix. I'll leave it at that for today, inshallah. Hamza, we don't have anything else to do. So, yeah, hope everybody has an excellent Ramadan. I will update you in terms of the discourses. Check it out on the Instagram and the Facebook, what's going to happen over Ramadan. It's possible that we may take a break for Ramadan because I think I've done like 17 discourses in a row or something. So I think you need a break from me as well. So yeah, definitely. So we've got the Ramadan program. So keep your eyes open for that, peeled for that, and you'll get some updates, inshallah. Inshallah. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.